Well, hey there, it's July 19th, 2022, and it's time for another recap of the week. I'm Anna Rose, doing my thing yet again. Um, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Uvalde shooting. Things are still developing and being released on that. This last week, a video was released um, showing what was going on in the hallways at the school while the shooter was in the classroom. You see many police officers who are doing various things that are not about actually trying to access the classroom to save these kids and the teacher who died in there. Um, in fact, one of those police officers is the husband of the teacher who died, and he was busy retreating and everything else with the rest of his fellow officers. He may be the same officer who has a Punisher wallpaper on the front of his phone screen. So, raw. Um, the video also had some sound redacted from it, specifically the sound of the screams of the children who were being slaughtered in that classroom while those police officers stood there and did nothing, as far as anyone's been able to tell. Um, it has been a massive shit show. Um, the response to the audio having been redacted is, of course, fury. Um, I think it's important that those people who think that firearms are their God-given right to have, um, those things um, can do grievous injury and death in the hands of people who should not have them. Um, and just because you are old enough to buy a gun and you don't have a criminal record, that doesn't mean that you should have a firearm. Um, when the founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment, they had gunpowder and ball firearms in mind. They did not have um, multiply chambered weapons and automatic weapons and the like in mind, because while I'm sure there probably were those people who assumed that would eventually be the thing, I don't think that was on their minds when the Second Amendment was written. Plus, the Second Amendment was written with the idea of arming a militia. And the militias that I'm seeing these days are the ones that like to walk around in uh, white robes with pillowcases with eye holes cut in them. They like to walk around and set fire to things and threaten people and everything else. And that is not the sort of militia that our founding fathers had in mind at all. And I have no question as to that thought. There needs to be real change enacted for our firearm laws. And there needs to be some sort of penalty, I guess, for lack of a better word, made against the people responsible for deploying these officers and having them retreat when it was clear that little kids were dying. That's grotesque. Innocent children dying, never, ever, ever acceptable. In other news, Senator Ted Cancun Cruz has decided to challenge SCOTUS's decision on marriage. And I call it marriage rather than gay marriage because when it comes right down to it, it's all the same thing. Unless you've got specific vows written, the vows aren't going to be changing much. That's just the way things are. And if two people, whether they are differing genders, the same gender, they're legal adults, they want to get married, I have no problem with that. They want to make a legal commitment to one another. And that's more than just, I love you and let's get married and do it legally. This is a situation where if you have a healthcare situation come up, you may not be able to make decisions for your loved one who needs care because you are not legally married to them. And that's a very real thing. And I'm sure there are people out there who can share that. And I hope you will share that if you've experienced it or you know people who've gone through that. Please share that in the comments here. I would very much like to hear from you about that. Um, situations of when the spouse, one spouse finally goes on to their next great adventure and having to deal with a probate situation and what's involved in making that happen. It's much easier if they're married, if they have a spouse. They can, things can be handled a lot better, and you don't necessarily have situations like I know for a fact happened several years ago. The manager of the apartment building I lived in, he had um, he was married to this was before it was legalized by the Supreme Court. He was married to a very delightful young man, and the manager unexpectedly developed meningitis, and it killed him. And when the young man's family arrived in town, um, the husband of the manager was completely pushed aside, and his wishes were totally ignored. And I remember seeing the obituary, and he was not present in that listing. It was as though he never existed. And stuff like this shouldn't be allowed to happen. And two people, or even more people really, getting married has no effect on Ted Cruz. It has no effect on you. If you don't want to marry somebody of the same sex or marry more than one person, like I said, keeping in mind this is consenting adults here, it's not going to affect you. It doesn't affect your job. It doesn't affect what your dinner tastes like. It doesn't affect anything like that. Consenting adults should be able to be married without having to. I mean, these are people who want to get married. They want to have the legal responsibility. And in this case, yes, divorces happen. We know that. We've seen it happen with same sex couples. It's a thing. We can't pretend it's not potentially going to happen because it happens in heterosexual marriages too. It's. Anyways, marriage is marriage, and Ted Cruz needs to shove it up his ass because this has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with me. I mean, I one of my aunts is gay, and she was in long committed relationships over the years. And I remember what she went through, and she had a breakup and it went very badly, and there was nothing she could do about it in the court system because her relationship was not recognized at that time, and that wasn't right at all. I just don't get it. um, Other things, gas prices are finally starting to come down. um, it's been hilarious looking at the Fap Weasels crowd who insists that Biden has something to do with the price of fuel. That's not Biden. The president has no control over the price of fuel oil, of crude oil, anything like that. That is a combination of OPEC and the stock market. Period. So when the price of a barrel of oil goes up, gas prices are commensurately and are going to go up. That's just the way it works, boys and girls. Biden, even the Fap Weasel, or anybody, any other president, they have no control over that. Now, what Biden has done is he has directed the release of certain amounts of the oil from our strategic oil reserve to be released so it can be refined and turned into fuel and stuff. And that too could possibly be helping to bring the price of fuel oil down. But then we also have fears of a recession right now, and that also affects the stock market. And if you follow the stock market like I do, you can see it's been incredibly volatile. Some days it's up, lately it's been down a lot. But that's the way things work. It's all what people are into right now. You want to buy this stock, that stock. I mean, for example, Google stock just split 20 to 1. And that's because a share of Google stock was running at least $2,000. So that brings the price of that stock down considerably, because suddenly your one share is 20 shares. And while it seems like you have a lot more, it's going to take a while for the value of those individual stocks to go up again. And who knows when that is going to happen. I don't plan to invest in Google because I have issues with things, which is hilarious considering YouTube is a Google product. But there it is. You know, I'm glad gas prices are going down. I miss the days when I could use a $20 bill to buy a full tank of gas and get change back. I mean, like in dollars, not just pennies, dollars back. I remember when the price of gas went up in the early 1970s and people went completely lunatic about it. And you know what? The price of gas went up to just under 80 cents a gallon at that time. And people were they were furious about that. So compare that less than 80 cents a gallon in the early 70s to now. When I just drove by the gas station this morning, it was, and I'm here in Southern California, it was $5.29 and 9 tenths a gallon for regular unleaded gasoline. That percentage of increase is insane. And people in other countries actually laugh at us when we complain about the price of fuel, because keep in mind, when you look at the European price of fuel, they're measuring that in liters, not gallons. So if you want to know how much they're actually paying for fuel, figure that as a liter as opposed to a gallon, and they're paying more. And they feel that we've definitely had it easy for a long time. And yes, that hurts our bottom line in our pocketbooks, because we still have to pay rent. We have to, pay our bills, feed our families, the whole 9 yards. It's just the way it is. So that's what's going on. I rambled a bit, and I'm sorry about that. The world is crazy right now, and there's a lot of people who are looking at leaving the country over it. And I can't say I blame them. The United States is currently devolving. Our democracy was referred to as the Great Experiment. And it really sucks to see that our little petri dish has been contaminated by some of the most vile and noxious bacteria that there is out there. And the only way that we can turn this around is to get to the polls and vote every single fucking election, not just presidential elections, because the people who are elected in between those presidential elections are the ones who are still making laws, and they're making decisions that affect you. And if you don't like what's going on, you need to get out there and you need to vote. And I don't fucking care if you think that your vote doesn't count, because it does. Your vote keeps an asshole like Ted Cruz from remaining in office. Think about that. Your vote keeps an asshole like Brett Kavanaugh off the Supreme Court. So don't tell me your vote doesn't count, because it fucking does. Every fucking vote. Think about what Trump and his people tried to do in this last election by attempting to install fake electors. And they probably almost got away with it. And that's something scary to think about. And I'm going to try and end every single one of these YouTube podcasts with an exhortation to you to get off your ass and fucking vote. And don't vote for Mickey Mouse. Don't vote for Donald Duck. Don't vote for your whatever. vote for an actual viable candidate. A protest vote is a vote for the other side. And that's bullshit too. You have to vote to get the correct people in office, people who will actually represent you and those things you hold important. Because if you take a look at the number of people who are actually getting out and voting for each election, it goes down every fucking year because of the apathy people in this country have to voting. Maybe we should follow something like Australia, who actually legally require you to vote and you are fined if you don't. Think about that. Anyway, I will talk to you again later. So try and have a good day. I'll be here again later. Bye.